Peep rotation. There's nothing more frustrating than pulling your bow back on a nice buck only to not be able to see your pins clearly because your peep is rotated. This is something that I've personally experienced in the field and know Chris and Rick both have as well. In order to reduce this risk, we only pick high quality bowstrings to put on our bows. That is why this season we have partnered up with Hooked Up Bowstrings. If you are looking for a high quality string to help get you through the season, look no further than Hooked Up. Matt, the owner, is a fantastic guy. He is an accomplished competition archer and an accomplished hunter in the woods. You can visit his website at hookedupbowstrings.com. Use the code MOBILEHUNTER10. That's Mobile Hunter, the number 10, in order to get 10% off your order.
Hey guys, Rick here from the Mobile Hunter Podcast, and I'm here to tell you about one of our sponsors, Sadie's LLC, Custom Ammunition and Gun Works. Aaron Satterfield and his family have been turning out some awesome game loads that have been putting down deer, waterfowl, and turkey all year long. The Sadie's Fatty, the turkey load that we use, can stop a bird dead in its tracks. Check them out at saddiesllc.com. That's SATTIES LLC.com, or on Facebook at Saddies LLC, and tell them the Mobile Hunter Podcast sent you.
Welcome to the Mobile Hunter Podcast. Our mission is simple. We want to help you become a better hunter. We believe that mobility kills and efficiency will set you free.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope you're cracking a beer with us right now. To introduce my guest here, this is my buddy Cam Maderski. He is soon to be the best man at my wedding in 2025. And we have had a lot of absolutely batshit insane adventures together. And he is a great vehicle to tell those adventures because you get to hear... I mean, my version, I try to make myself not look like the villain. But Cam is 100% aware of the amount of times that I've almost killed him. And he's a great source for an unfiltered access to a lot of these really insane things that I feel like we've had so many memories together that like are genuinely once in a lifetime for so many other people. And it kind of goes with the theme of this podcast, but I really want stories that you tell and you wonder if anyone in this world has ever experienced them before, or just stuff that, you know, makes you laugh and is out of the blue. And that's what we're going to talk about today is actually our trip to Wyoming. I don't think I really versed you on what we were going to talk about, but because it's just supposed to be as authentic as possible. But it's this will be a great episode to kick it off. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good?
I'm good. Yeah. As far as almost dying goes, definitely remember one of the first things your dad ever told my parents.
Oh, no. I don't even know where we're going with this, actually.
Well, after the first, 2 or 3 times of hanging out, he said, you better hug your son extra tight every time he leaves that door to go hang out with my son, because you never know if you might not make it back. Yeah. And, boy, have there been some close calls.
Yeah, there have been quite a bit, but it's all in the name of fun. I mean, you keep coming back, so
right.
That's a little bit your fault, I think. I think we can defer all the fault to you, actually.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you were literally given a fair warning, and now you're like, what, 10 near-death experiences in, and that's being quite generous to myself there.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah, and you keep coming back, so it's a lot of type 2 fun or type 3 fun, whatever they call that. But yeah, so what year was this? It was 2019, 2020?
Yes.
I think so. I think it was it when we were in college? Whatever, irrelevant. It was a ways back, probably 5-6 years ago. And I was watching a lot of these YouTube videos that were like backcountry fishing and a lot of wild trout fishing. And for 2 years straight, I had gone out with first my buddy Michael Burgy. I went out with him to Colorado. We went to Maroon Bells and we did a little bit of camping, a little bit of like hotel and work our way back to the area. But we did a lot of backcountry camping and trout fishing and hiking. And that was our first experience in it. We were not smart at all. Had some severe problems with altitude sickness and wasn't super smart, but we had some of the most amazing experiences I ever had, and it changed my life. And then the year after, I wanted to go back to Maroon Bells with Michael, and he couldn't do it, so I invited my brother, and we had some amazing experiences. It seemed like every single time I went out to the backcountry and camped in the wild or hiked out there or was in the mountains, I just felt closer to who I really was, and I wanted to share this experience. It's not just enough for me to bring myself to near death and have a lot of fun. I have to bring other people into it. And unfortunately, the side effect is the crazy shit that happens. But this next year, we were like, we're going to make this a big trip. So we were trying to plan a trip to, I don't know if we should give the specific part, but the Wind River Range. I won't say what loop we were on, but we were planning a trip to the Wind River Range in Wyoming, and we were going to go trout fishing, and we landed on early August, I think it was. And that will be really relevant later on, why that is not the time to go to the Wind River Range. But we started off the summer, we didn't know if you were going to be able to come. And you were talking about you had some financial things that you were trying to work out. So you actually picked up a second job, I believe.
Well, even before I even knew I was going to go, it was you, me, and Burgy sitting in your basement, and you pulled up the channel of the guys who did the same loop, and we watched maybe an hour and a half worth of that video.
And this guy, we should point out before the story starts, he's not in good shape. Not in fantastic shape, I'll say. He's in better shape than we were. Check out the channel Fike and Hish. He has some fantastic videos on backcountry camping combined with trout fishing, and that's just a really special thing for us in Wisconsin. I mean, we have trout fishing and stuff, but man, catching them in the mountains and getting to experience that and then do some kind of catch, clean, cook or stuff like that on top of it when we can't go during hunting season for work reasons or at the time college. It's like the perfect vacation for us. And so, yeah, you were going on about
so we were in your basement. I mean, we watched probably an hour and a half worth of videos, and at the time, like, it was just you and Burgy that were planning your next trip. And I was like, all right, like, we got to do something else.
That's right, yeah.
And you were like, hey, like, do you know why we're showing you all this stuff? And I was like, no, whatever. Like, I'm kind of ready to just go somewhere, whatever. And you're just like, it's because you're coming with.
I totally forgot that.
Yeah,
we were doing...
you guys made me watch an hour and a half worth of videos and sit and listen to you guys try to plan out exactly what you were going to do without me having any idea that you were going to even ask me to join you. So in my head, I'm like, all right, these guys are just being, whatever.
Planning this.
Yeah, planning this whole extravagant trip that I would love to go on right in front of my face. And
I totally forgot we did that. We did that just to mess with you too. We were like, it would be a great idea if we just f***ed with Cam. But I think afterward we were going back through like what we should do. And then you were like, dude, I was not paying attention. I was just pissed off the whole time.
Yeah.
You were like, I was not focusing on what we were supposed to do at all. So we were trying to plan this loop with Days, and Cam was like, I've been no part of this decision-making process because
it's completely irrelevant to me.
Right.
I was like, whatever, this is going to mean absolutely nothing. I'm just going to zone out.
Oh, my God. And so we did that. And then you at first thought you weren't going to be able to go. You're like, I have to justify the pricing to your parents because you're living at your dad, because you're living at your parents' house at the time. You're in summer off from school, and you're going to be going to college, and that's a big dollar sign right there. And I had this job landscaping, and I was like, we're going to build a spreadsheet to like budget Cam's summer so he can go on this trip. And then I got you in on that landscaping job, and you could, as long as it wasn't dark out, you could go pick up hours there. And so we ended up scrapping together and making the money for it.
Yeah, shout out Mr. Festerling for that.
Yeah, Ryan, what a dude. But so we just totally scrapped together and made this happen. A lot of other little things happened along the way. I mean, we were trying to figure out our bag weights, and I had a I think it was a Proline or a Mojo decoy bag as one of our heavy packs. Like, we didn't have frame packs. We had like a half-size blue frame pack that was probably from the 1960s.
At first,
that thing was so weird. And then I got an Alps bag. I got like an actual, like as cheap as you could get. Actually, was the kind I got. I don't know if it was Alps or what it was, but it was really cheap. It broke during the trip. And that was a legit frame pack that had the best carrying capacity, and just no real support on it. Actually, now having a real bag, it was crap. But we had that half size, probably 24 quart, I think is what it would be, a 24 liter bag. And then after that, we had the Mojo decoy bag for duck hunting. And we carried like a week's worth of stuff for 3 guys in those 3 bags. And we were planning out the weights of those bags. And we kept putting in items and stuff like that. And do you remember how satisfied Burgy was with that? Like every time we got to like, this is how the bag's going to be packed, he didn't like it. Do you remember what we did to him to mess with him?
Didn't we put...
So we kept laying out the stuff, and we were like, fuck this guy. Like, he keeps complaining. So we're going to put something like really odd in there. I don't know if you remember, but I'll tell
What
it.
did we put in there?
A bowling ball.
That's right. That's right.
So the catch is we've packed these bags probably 3 times, and we were stepping on a scale and weighing out each item and doing all this stuff, and we can't afford the lightweight stuff. So we were dealing with actual heavy stuff. Like we had an air mattress and crap and a pump and like a big 10 and like just crappy stuff. And so we didn't pack extra mosquito spray because it was adding weight. And we were like, fuck it, we're throwing a bowling ball in here, and we're gonna see how he feels about that. So we're fully expecting him to put this on and reject it like every other one we've had, because he's at work. He can't help us plan this out. So he comes back from work, and we put the bowling ball in his bag, and he put it on. He's like, this one's actually really nice. Like the weight's distributed perfectly. I was like, oh my God, like that's the one he approved of. It was so funny, but
yeah,
so,
it's also worth noting, like, I am by and large the smallest guy in the group. So I'm at the time 5'7", 145.
Yeah. Yeah, Burgy's was about my size. He was probably like 180 at the time. But we all wrestled in high school, so we were all in pretty good shape. Cam played soccer, so we ran a lot. Like, we all had some decent VO2 maxes. Like, we weren't, like, going there out of shape for sure. But this guy...
Burgy was still trying to rehab his knee.
Oh, that's true.
Right, because he tore his ACL, so he was just, like, on the tail end of
that's right, yeah.
recovering from that.
You know, so many... Like, I need to have people on this podcast because I forget so many details. But, so we do all that, and then we're driving there, and my really old... was very beat up at the time. I think it was the 06 Sierra when I had first gotten it. And we were going through these areas, and I want you to tell this story because I'm not good at it, but my fiance now was on the phone with me for the last time before we were leaving an area with signal. So we were about to leave signal for the next 9 days. And I was on the phone with her, and I was in the back seat, and you guys were talking, and you guys had this running joke, and I'm going to let you run with this story, but I'll let you explain kind of what you made her think at the last time I was going to talk to her 9 days.
Okay.
At the time, that was the impression, okay?
We're going to say what I made her think.
Okay.
So we're about to leave service. Jacob's on the phone with Caitlin, and I thought it would be a great idea to say, hey, Jacob, when are you going to tell her? And he's like, tell her what? It's like, tell her you're going to break up with her. And he goes, dude, you need to shut the fuck up right now. I was like, and as soon as it came out of my mouth, I just started dying laughing, and Burgy is dying laughing. I was like, dude, like, you might as well tell her now so you can enjoy the trip. So
Caitlin's like reeling back, like, what? She's like, that's like the only thing I can hear from her. It's like, that's the only thing I can hear from her.
Okay.
So like, cause we're losing signal.
I say it, and I just start dying laughing.
Right.
So
she can't hear you dying laughing because it's cutting in and out.
I wouldn't be surprised if whatever. I was 100% certain that she was very well versed in the fact that this was a joke.
Mm-hmm. She said, so basically, I think because it's cutting in and out, and I'm losing her. I think when she can't hear me, or when I can't hear her, she can't hear me. And so basically, what Cam gets out is, when are you going to tell her that you're going to break up with her? And then he pauses, and then he laughs, and then during that pause, I lost her. So I thought that we both lost signal, and that the last thing she heard was, when are you going to break up with her? And then she cut out, and then the call like eventually dropped, and ended on, I didn't think Caitlin had heard a single thing we said besides, when are you going to tell her we're going to break up with her? And then the call drops. And then I thought we were just going to go on this 9-day trip where Caitlin's like panicking back home, goes through all the stages of regret and remorse and grief, and then gets a better boyfriend. And I thought I'd be screwed. But I think, did we pick up a call again later that drive? I think right before we got in the mountains.
You got on the phone with her multiple times.
Oh, I was so pissed at you guys,
and
too,
every time you got on the phone with her, I was like, dude, this isn't funny anymore. Like, you got to tell her. And then I would just burst out laughing. And, like, I can't stress it enough, like, how hard I was laughing at the – like, I could barely get the words out because I was laughing, like, as I was saying it. So it could not have been more obvious that it was a joke. And Jacob was so wound up. He was so angry that, like, he thought that the last thing that his now fiance was going to hear is that he was going to break up with her right when he got back or whatever.
Yeah, it was definitely the altitude. I don't ever get worked up like that. I'm really
you never get worked
never in my life
anything.
Never did. So that's the start, and then we get there finally, and man, we're not smart.
Well, first of all, when Jacob gets excited about a trip, he needs to drive.
Mm-hmm.
He has to be in control.
I have to be the last person to drive along the way. Well, it's also my truck, and at the time, and still kind of, I didn't have any money.
This was what, a 17-hour drive or 19-hour drive, something like that.
18 or 19, yeah.
And you probably drove
12.
15 of those hours.
15, you think?
I don't know. You drove.
I think I drove a 10-hour.
I didn't drive at all on the way there, and I think
right.
Burgy only did one stint.
That's right, because I only slept like 2 hours, and that was right after I.
And we kept on saying, Jacob, you need to stop driving. Let us drive and like close your eyes. You're like, you're going to be exhausted. You're like, no, I feel fine.
Yeah, I forgot. Well, I was so hyped.
I know. So and you wouldn't let anybody else drive. So you like completely exhausted yourself right before we started.
So I'm running on half of a fuse and zero gasoline right now.
And then you
in
have
my
me
mind.
in the back seat constantly telling you that you need to break up with your girlfriend already.
You guys are so good at like instigating me too. Burgy was a legend at that. He knew how to push my buttons, but he was, in hindsight, it was hilarious. But yeah, we had a really good back and forth back in the day. But we get there. I'm running on no sleep. I'm freaking jacked. And the day we get there, no sleep, no nothing. We don't take time to acclimate, which is what you should do if you're not familiar with the area of Wisconsin we're in. Our elevation's around 230 feet. And the elevation that we were at, baseline was 10,000. So it was 10 or 9. I mean, it was
Something
high.
like that.
Yeah, it was high. Which, I think they say a day per 5,000 feet or something like that. Or like there's some amount of hours that you're supposed to take to acclimate. I don't know what the real figure is, so don't quote me on that. But we get there, and day one, I could look it up on my phone actually right now, but I think it was like 6.9 miles. 7.1 or 6.9.
I don't know how far we actually made it. I think we wanted to try to get
the goal was like 9. We made it.
No, I thought we broke it up where it was like we wanted.
The first day was the most aggressive, most lengthwise hike.
I think we did 5 or 6 miles in the first day.
We did more than that, I think. I can look it up on OnX. I tracked all these trips beforehand. This is my ADHD OCD right here. I tracked all these trips in OnX, and I made a color-coded itinerary using the notes section to plan out exactly what day we were, so I could share it with my parents and his parents and tell them, despite not having signal, exactly where we were going to be.
Because essentially, the farthest we got was supposed to be our first, so we split the trip up where we wanted to just fully dedicate the first 2 days to hiking.
Yeah. We were going to get where we wanted to go and then spend time fishing.
Which was I want to say 10 miles.
Yeah.
You're
probably
around
right.
10 miles.
You have a better recollection than I do.
So
on this stuff.
We got about 5 miles in the first day. And, I mean, you watch videos of people doing this online who seem like they're out of shape.
I don't think
whatever.
I don't think they even did the same distance too.
I thought that they did more. I remember sitting at the end of the day being like, how in the world did these guys?
I think that guy lives in Wyoming or Oregon.
I have no idea, but whatever. Shout out to them because we thought this would be cake, and it kicked our ass. So we
Day 1, 7 miles. The true distance 7.02 miles.
Okay.
Damn.
Yeah.
So day 1 was 7 miles, and we ended up making
Day 2, we did not go far.
Yeah. So again, no holds barred in this story. We ended up making it 6. Day 1 plan was 7. So we ended up making it 6, and this is hilarious. So I packed like a tackle box, and part of the tackle box was like little bits of toilet paper and medical supplies and stuff like that, outside of our actual tackle boxes. And we made it like 5.5 miles, and we were like struggling. We didn't know at the time how essential it was to hydrate, to avoid altitude sickness. We did a decent job hydrating.
Well, I talked about this. I was actually talking about this with my dad the other day. We all got Life Straw water bottles.
Bring your mic a little bit closer to your face, just a tiny bit. There you
We
go.
all got Life Straw water bottles, and they were brand new when we started, which I don't know if anybody else has tried to drink from a brand new filtered water bottle. It takes a while to break them in.
Yeah, it's one that has a packed filter inside of it. Like if you look up an image of a Life Straw, so it's hard to get water through it.
Correct. You need to break them in, and
I went with a Sawyer system this last trip to Wyoming.
Yeah,
it was fantastic compared to it. Not even close.
Yeah, well, towards the end it was okay, but like essentially we had to work so hard to try to suck water like through the straw. Like I could feel the top of like the roof of my mouth would like swell up.
Yeah.
Because I would like suck so hard and I would barely get any water. So it was like.
And usually you're great at sucking, so it's like you're usually a natural.
Right. But no, so it was like we had packed a lot of water for the start, which just so we wouldn't have to worry about it. So like we got through the first day, and I think we still like hadn't gone through our full reserve to where we would need to strictly rely on a filtered water bottle.
Yeah.
But from that point forward, it was like it was very difficult.
We only had 1.5 liter smart water bottles, or maybe 1 liter.
Yeah.
And we barely went through that, which is stupid. Like, which is not smart. I think we pounded water beforehand, but that was like while we were eating freaking Twinkies and finishing up our drive, and then so that's like a net zero effect really for how much caffeine was ingested to get there. But we weren't drinking enough water, and we got to 5.5 miles, and we were like, I was like, we're gonna freaking finish this, and the sun's starting to get low, and it wasn't too low yet, but you started to get a bloody nose.
Yeah.
And so for the last like half mile, and I believe, I mean, it's not supposed to be grizzly country, but we know from a park ranger there was a grizzly along the loop, like a family of grizzlies that were there further in the loop, and there was very many black bears. She was saying it like they were thinking of taking out some of the black bears because they were starting to interact with people more. So we have that in the back of our minds, and you're dripping blood. Like you're leaving like a
trail.
Like single lung, blood trail. And I think half of our morale was we need to frickin' push on, and then it was like we're also gonna die. Like we're gonna get tracked by a bear.
I'm sitting here like literally leaving a trail of blood because we stopped at the first lake to make dinner.
Right.
And as soon as we stopped, I think we all kind of realized like, all right, there's no starting this back up.
Yeah, we're in like very poor condition. We stopped at the bottom of the lake.
Yeah. So
and we're in very poor condition.
Yeah. So we were like, you know what? Let's just eat dinner, get to the other side of the lake, pitch a tent, and call it a night, and we'll see like what we can do tomorrow. So
we're sitting there eating dinner. It was poor. It was pretty windy, so it was hard to get it the propane stove going correctly. And we got to the north side of the lake, and we started like pitching the tent, right, and getting everything together. And
Yep.
so we started doing our bear protocols. And by the time we hit this lake, the mosquitoes were horrendous. Like it was, we've had a family cabin for years off the Wisconsin River, and it floods all the time. And every year it floods, and we go in the early summer every year, and there's always so much stagnant water and mud. Like the mosquitoes are horrendous, and it was far, far worse than that. And the Wind River Range, in case you don't know, is thousands of lakes and small bodies of water, and they're just stagnant sitting there. There's some current flowing in and out. Obviously, there's your inlet and outlet, but it is a perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes because you have peaks around. You have a lot of areas that are shaded from wind, despite it being called the Wind River Range, and a lot of natural tall green grass with wetlands and lakes. And it's just a mosquito capital of the world in some places, and we didn't know that going in. We only heard one rumor that mosquitoes weren't that bad. And so we go in there without the right gear for mosquitoes, and we are getting lit up by mosquitoes as the sun's setting. And it's debilitating. Like, so me and Burgy went to hang the bag. You were working on the tent, and we were just swearing and freaking out, trying to like hang a bag with our deodorant and toothbrushes and whatnot, and whatever food we had, and we like toss the rope over, and we're like, freaking good enough. Like we were just losing it. Like we didn't care at this point if all of our food and crap got eaten. Like we were done, and we were just getting murdered. We had a small amount of mosquito spray, and we weren't trying to waste it the first night. And I get back to the tent, and you guys are still trying to figure out the tent. We're trying to get some kind of we were trying to get a fire going for another reason too. At that time, they were good with fires, I believe. And I went to go put away the soap and the dishes because we had I think you washed the dishes.
Yeah.
And then we went and put away the soap and the dishes because obviously that stuff smells and whatnot. And I go way up this ridge from our camp, and it's a mountain. So I start up this mountain. I make it like as a crow flies 200 yards from our tent, and vertically the slope was ridiculous. I was on my hands and knees for portions of it. And I put this stuff under a rock, and I'm sitting down, like making sure it's all hidden well and marked. And I stand up, and I blacked out. And like I stood up too quick, severely dehydrated, really fatigued. But like you were saying, we didn't know how bad it was until we stopped. And I was still like, I had my adrenaline going because I was salty that my itinerary wasn't getting fulfilled, because I was like, oh, this takes away from the last day. We're not going to be able to complete the loop. And like, I was being very selfish. And I packed the stuff up. I stood up and I passed out, and I woke up, and where I was looking was a boulder. And I woke up because you guys were yelling for me. You're like, where the hell are you? And I see a boulder next to my head, and I lift my head, and I look down, and the only place that my head rested, it was about like 5 yards downhill from where I was last standing. And it was the only patch of dirt on that whole area. The rest of it was boulders. And I wake up facing this boulder. I was probably out for like a couple minutes. But I didn't realize how like crazy that was. I just kind of stood up and walked down. And I got in the tent, and you guys are jibber-jabbering about whatnot. And I got my sleeping bag, and then I just like started crying. And you guys were making fun of me so bad. So like, explain this from your perspective here.
So, and this is where Jacob driving 13 hours.
Don't give me mercy now. Just don't make excuses.
This is where
for me.
Jacob driving 13 hours and refusing to take anything that anyone else said into consideration all comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he comes back. He's like, guys, I think I have like really severe altitude sickness. I just blacked out when I was putting the dishes away. And then he just broke down and started crying because he didn't know if he was going to die or not. And the only thing... You guys
were giving me shit for being afraid that I was about to die.
Not in the moment. We gave it until the morning to start giving you
I
shit.
don't know if you gave it that far. You gave it like an hour.
But essentially, he was upset because he didn't know if he was going to die. And his words were like, if I don't make it out of here alive and I didn't tell my family that I loved them and my girlfriend that I loved her like one last time, and like that was going to just destroy you. So like you start all these thoughts in your head of like, I was so underprepared, I was so dehydrated, I was exhausted, I made an itinerary that was like way over exaggerated our capabilities.
Dragged you guys into it.
I dragged my best friends into it. Like someone could have seriously got hurt. Started just like completely freaking out, and then just like broke down and started crying.
Yeah. And I just remember sitting there in my sleeping bag. What was it like for you guys when I came in, by the way? Like, what were you guys up to? I don't even remember.
I mean, we were all just...
I'm pretty sure I got in my sleeping bag and then I said something. I think I was like tearing up in my sleeping bag and then I admitted.
I don't know. I just... All I remember is that I was extremely exhausted.
Just got done with a bloody nose.
I just got done with a bloody nose. I'm thinking about bears. And then Jacob comes in crying because he almost died.
I'm pretty sure I started crying in the tent, but
yes.
Minor details.
Yeah, but...
So I was sitting there and I was thinking of like, you don't realize, like the whole time is we just weren't realizing the situation we were in until we got there. But we all had severe migraines and we all wrote it off as like, well, these bottles are really hard to drink water out of. And that added to a bit of it. But we also weren't getting enough water. We were going too far, nowhere near acclimated, which very rare, but people have died from altitude sickness. Very, very rare. I don't know if it's in the single digits or what, but it might be the repercussions of the state you're in when you're altitude sick.
Regardless, Jacob knew that you could die from that, and so he started panicking,
and I just
that he could be one of those people.
Right, and I just on the top of a cliff, essentially a cliff, passed out and rolled 5 yards and somehow didn't hit my head on a boulder. And like I was a slip away, a flat edge away, a rock away from being dead, in my opinion. And at the time I thought that would have killed me. And I just remember thinking like holy shit, I almost just died and I didn't tell my family like that I was even feeling like shit. My friends would have had to, I remember thinking this and getting teary. My friends would have had to carry my body out 7 miles. And they're in horrible condition. Like, not to mention, I would have ruined the fishing trip. That's probably the worst part. Yeah. But like, my mom would have just trusted me and sent me off on this trip, and they would have to drive my body back in my vehicle to go tell my mom I'm dead. And my actions just caused us to be in this situation. On my plan, my itinerary, I felt like shit about it. And this is kind of why I got fed up with you guys giving me shit about the plan in the future. And I couldn't like tell you, unpacking it in hindsight. I couldn't tell you that's why I was pissed off.
It would have been.
I was just feeling it.
You would have broken up with your girlfriend in a different way.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I love that detail. But yeah, so I honestly think you guys were giving me shit within the night. But we went to bed that night, and that's kind of just like the start of the story. It gets maybe worse from there. It gets pretty unusual. But yeah, we woke up the next morning and we hit the trailhead knowing we weren't going to go nearly as far as before. And I think, which one of us was you never got altitude sick, or was it Burgy?
I wasn't the one. So Burgy got altitude sick.
Burgy got very sick.
But I remember you telling me your first trip to Colorado, you did not get altitude sickness.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, my first one I did. Me and Burgy.
I thought it was your first one.
Me and Burgy were in a similar situation where we passed out on a hill and we didn't realize that it was because we were altitude sick. I have a video of Burgy like laying his head down and popping up and like freaking out.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I thought like your first time, you're sort of a little immune to it, and then if you were to go back and put yourself in that position again, that's when it would hit you. So I was the only one that hadn't experienced altitude before.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I was the only one that was okay.
It might be that you're the best conditioned. And
yeah.
maybe you paid attention to your hydration better, and you're pumping less oxygen. I mean, you're smaller.
I had
you're
the
smaller.
lightest bag.
Yeah, you had the lightest bag. You're smaller. I was always like, I'll take the heaviest bag. I'll do that. Like, I was like,
Yeah, I remember.
I was just, it wasn't an ego thing, but I was like jacked up to do this trip, and I wanted to make it good for you guys. And that's kind of what makes me sad when things go awry. I mean, the reason you guys give me so much shit about things going bad is because you know it gets to me. But the reason it gets to me
I
is
also
because
know how much you care.
Exactly. I was going to say that's why it gets to me. The reason it gets to me is because, like, my journey in the outdoors is to bring people along the thing that saved my life. And this will be a Wild Calling Wednesday episode, a much more serious one. But I know you know most of the story, or if not all of it. But, like, I want that wonder in my friends that my dad saw in my eyes when I learned hunting. Like, I want to pass down the thing I am put on this earth to do. And when I am introducing people to an aspect of it that they're relatively foreign to, whether that be in a hunt or a trip like this, which you weren't super foreign to it.
Yeah, I kind of was.
Yeah, Burgy not as much because he had done the one with me before. But when I introduce someone and it's my plan, my destination, whatever, like, and I screwed up and I give them an awful experience, it makes me really sad. Like, I feel like I'm not doing justice to the thing I love so much. I feel like it's not justice to the industry. It's not good. The industry, that's a freaking horrible slip there. It's not justice to what the outdoors really is. Justice to what the outdoors means. You know, it's as far from the industry as possible when I'm trying to give them a real feel for what it is and what it means.
Well, you know,
in a pure value, and I just make it seem like a suffering event to you guys. That makes me feel horrible. And still to this day, I shouldn't let it get to me as much, but it makes me feel horrible when I put you through something that makes you suffer in something that should be so rewarding.
Yeah, but in the same way, I mean, hunting public land.
I do want you to. I should say I do want you to feel the realism. Like, I do want you to feel what it's really like. I think it's more fun when you suffer beforehand. I don't think you agree with that though, because you don't scout. So you like keep.
We
up
can
with your
talk about that
girlfriend or
another day. But regardless, the things that are, and like, no one in my family hunts. I'm kind of the only one, except for my grandpa. I'm pretty much the only one that is outdoorsy.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my family is way out east in Pennsylvania. We're the only ones in Wisconsin. So as far as family goes, it's just my immediate family, and I'm the only one that does that. So as far as like getting exposed to hunting and fishing and everything hunting wise, Jacob has exposed me to. Everything fishing wise.
Most of the things.
Most of the things fishing-wise, Jacob has exposed me to. But I would still fish on my own, whatever, before I knew him. But you don't understand how the best things that the outdoors has to offer sometimes require the most amount of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's the most frustrating about it, especially hunting public land, is like, you want to get into those remote areas that no one wants to touch, whatever, and it absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
And there's going to be so many walks in like terrible places and a lot of failures and a lot of hard work with seemingly no reward. And I was at a stage, I think Jacob recognized that I was at a stage in my relationship with the outdoors to where I didn't fully understand.
It was vulnerable.
I didn't fully understand what you had to give in order to receive the full benefits of like what being out in a remote country that's untouched by people has to offer, or what like true untouched trout fishing like in the mountains,
What the work could be rewarded with.
Correct. Like your perception, like everyone sees, and that's the worst part about YouTube, in my opinion, and social media as a whole, is like you're only seeing the best. You're only seeing the best pieces of a story, which gives you a false reality of what it takes to experience that. So you can watch guys go and do this hike all you want until you're the one doing it, and you realize, oh, like when they cut this scene and come back 2 miles later, like when you're watching that at home, like you can't appreciate the work it took to get from point A to point B because it's there in a second. And so I think that's a lot of the pressure that you felt was like, not that you wanted it to be easy, but it was significantly harder than you wanted it to be, and you felt like you were letting us down, and like we were all just underachieving what we wanted for something that like we all had hoped for.
And it was also the concept of being the leader and failing you, like being weaker than you guys were. Like, because that's really what it was. I was weaker than you were. I don't know if it's a conditioning thing or bad luck or it's probably the freaking driver, whatever amount of excuses. But I didn't do the preparation necessary to be a leader in that scenario, and I neglected details that were important, and that's my fault. Still is. The way I handled it was very awful too, and I was beating myself up over that. I argued with Michael a lot during the trip, which was not great. Like, and I just think I needed to do a lot of maturing, and I handled it really poorly. In hindsight, would have handled it a lot differently, but we still made an amazing trip out of it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's
we'll get to all the details later on here.
Everybody out there has had a trip that at one point or another has felt like it could have been ruined by something that went wrong. And we were one day in, and it felt like there was a lot that was going wrong. And, but that's where the people that you're with on these experiences are really important, because even though Jacob was crying and felt like he was going to die.
Like a bitch.
Burgy and I were still sitting there maybe laughing at him, but like still trying to have fun. Yeah. And that's where it's like, even though you might be embarrassed about how you reacted to something or embarrassed about how things are going, as long as you have a friend there that's willing to look positively upon things, like that can completely transform the experience and get you back on track. And
it's just about taking a fantastic coach I once had, and a lot of my supporters will know who this is, once said, you can't be discouraged by the things you cannot control. You need to be encouraged by the things you can control. And we can't control after the fact that now I'm in this terrible situation where I feel like I almost died. I feel like I was very close to being dead. I had this terrible altitude sickness. I had failed you on this trip. And the thing I could control was how I reacted to that information and how I treated you guys. And the things that you guys could control is stopping your bloody nose, having a positive attitude about what we're going to do tomorrow, chilling out for the rest of the night, making fun out of a poor situation. And I had not heard that from this coach yet. I had only been with that coach for maybe a semester. And I failed at taking care of the controllables. And I did the opposite of what I should have done. I got emotional. I got defensive. And it was a significant point of maturing in hindsight where I learned that was very poor reaction. But we won't bore anyone with the details of it all. Basically, the gist of it is Cam was not yet versed in the suffering portion of the outdoors. He was versed in the watch my bobber go down and catch a fishy portion of the outdoors, basically, to be, to put it extremely oversimplified. And you hadn't killed your first buck yet, but even your first buck was on one of your first hunts on public, and you killed a buck for your first deer.
I mean, I
killed my best deer ever at the time.
Yeah, I had hunted for a year and had no idea what I was doing.
Right. So like this was a fragile time in your exchange of is hunting and this kind of adventure worth it? And I felt like I was failing you, and it made it more severe.
Yeah,
was basically where we're at now.
Hunting and fishing, like fishing for me, I
was so different.
Yeah, I fished my whole life, but I didn't hunt until my freshman year of college.
Yeah, and it's funny because you fish your whole life, but there's not a thing that I do that I'm not extremely intense about. And so, like, probably most of like the advanced and wild and ballsy and more than we should be doing kind of things with fishing is what we've done. now we're embarking on day 2 of 9. A lot of these days are going to blend together, but the mosquitoes that we've reached at the end, we thought were because it was dark out, and it was really because we had reached a low area where the lake started, and they were not going to subside for the rest of this trip. So the next day, we adjusted the route a little shorter, to my chagrin, and we made it 2 miles.
I think we almost made it 3. Essentially, we woke up the next morning and we were like, hey, we are not going to be able to do what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, 100%.
So why don't we just make it as far as we feel comfortable making it on the second day, and we'll just play the rest of this by ear. We had a whole loop that we were going to do, bailed on the loop and said, you know what, we're just going to go as far as we think we can go, and then turn around and just go back the same way that we came. So made it about 2.5, 3 miles on the second day, and was like, you know what, like, with the bugs and how our bodies were feeling and how everything up until this point has played out, we were like, you know what, let's just fish.
And
because
we
that's what we were there to do.
100%, yeah, dude. We went over a really cool area where we actually ran a lot of like mule deer sign. I don't know if you remember that, but we went through a plain. We went through like a high plain. This is on this short hike that we saw a lot of like cool rocks. We kept picking up. We're all suckers, so we kept picking up. We called them crystals, but it was just what's it called? Quartz. We kept picking up quartz because we were gonna carve them into hearts for our girlfriends because we're sad saps.
I didn't have one at the time.
Yeah, well, you were gonna do it for yourself because you like jewelry. But so we kept collecting this quartz, and we got up through this little field with quartz and basalt and granite and all sorts of stuff that we don't have typically in Wisconsin, and moved down to an area that had some pines. We saw a lot of deer sign, which was pretty cool. We pondered whether it was elk or deer. It was definitely mule deer. Moved on past that. We passed a lake that I shouldn't name because we're giving it away. But we had a really cool occurrence on the way back at this lake. And we got to our next destination, which was a little creek. Basically the next major destination, we'll say. We eventually worked our way to this next major destination, which was a little creek in a valley with multiple peaks in sight. And if you can imagine this, we'll try and lay the scene here. You just got down off of a ridge. We got a large green plain stretching east to west. As you go east, there is a peak right where the river dissipates into the horizon. You can see a mountain peak with snow. And then on either side, there were ridges jutting down. So this peak perfectly occurred between these two little mountains. And the mountains kind of were close, so they rounded off into other areas. But you could perfectly see this peak that led to the horizon where this creek occurred. And it's a beautiful, clear mountain creek with all sorts of different features like sandy flats. It wasn't just your typical little, like narrow but deep or shallow or consistent. It was winding. It had boulders mixed throughout it so you could cross it in certain places. It had sand flats so you can fish in 4 inches of water, or it had deep pockets where fish were hiding under boulders that you could see down at the bottom if it was 15 feet deep. It was so clear, but you couldn't see these fish blended in so well with weed structure, rocks. It was as gorgeous as it gets. And the sun was setting. It was rising in the east, of course, so it rises at the end of that creek between the mountains, and it was setting right on the other side in line with that creek. And it was absolutely phenomenal and gorgeous, and not to mention, when you're in a valley in the mountains that's long because of that river, we had wind, which meant that the mosquitoes were reprieved for small moments throughout the day. And we dubbed these mosquitoes the saber-tooth mosquitoes because they were smaller than a Wisconsin mosquito, but they were vicious. Like, they were biting you at the first opportunity immediately, and they were on point at getting on you and getting through your clothes, and they would draft on you Do you remember what happened when the wind blew? Describe that.
There would be intense wind.
You'd have just to give people a general feel what it was like to deal with these mosquitoes. If you did not have wind, or you had wind sub 10 miles an hour, not just like 5, 10 miles an hour, you had probably 80 around you at a time, at the very least. 80 that you were aware of around you at a time, and 20 on your skin. On your clothes or on your skin, you had an 80-20, I would say.
It's like they would bite, and
through clothes, no problem.
They would stick their entire head into your skin. So you would have to like slap the mosquito to kill it, and then proceed to pull the head of it out of your arm or whatever. Yeah. And my family gives me shit about this all the time, because every time we're around mosquitoes, I tell them, I'm like, this
ain't shit.
Yeah, This is nothing compared to the mosquitoes that we face in Wyoming.
Yep.
And even if there's bad mosquitoes and I don't say anything, they're like, oh, I'm sure this isn't as bad as what you went. And I'm like, whatever. They don't get it. I mean, when we would leave the tent, I mean, it was to the point where it was like if someone had to pee and the three of us were in the tent, it was like, quick, throw up the zipper. Someone would dive out the door, run and pee, pray to God that mosquitoes weren't going to bite your wiener. Yep. Run back into the tent, and in the 3 seconds that the door was open and shut,
we get at least 10.
At least 10 would be in there, and we'd spend the next 3 to 4 minutes just like killing all the mosquitoes in the tent.
Yep, and this was literally
outrageous.
We would only lift up the tent enough that someone could dive through it and close it immediately after, and that was enough to get, I mean, at least 10 in the best of scenarios.
Somewhere there's got to be a video of.
We have some.
At
we
least,
definitely have some.
like we're in the tent and you like pan across the ceiling, and there's got to be 200 of them just like sitting on top of the tent, just like waiting.
Right. So when the wind would come through this valley and we would get reprieve from them for a moment, we thought that the cloud was dissipating, because like I thought I had been through the worst with mosquitoes in the swamps of Wisconsin River slack waters, which is worse than many of the swamps I've been in now in southeastern Wisconsin. But it's horrible. And the other thing, too, is like a lot of times around here, you get a lot of mosquitoes around you, but not all of them are trying to bite you. Well, it's rare when a snack comes around without a bunch of hair in the way in the Wind River Range. It's not that rare in Wisconsin. They are on you, and they bury themselves in. And I think a reason they do that is because it's the Wind River Range. That's how they stay in you, because they can't count on wind to not necessarily blow them off of their target, you know. But they would draft behind rocks and on your back in areas that weren't with wind. So they wouldn't. We were wondering how, with this high wind, would these mosquitoes all of a sudden be on you the minute it cuts out, like the very second it cuts out. And they would literally sit on the other side of rocks. Like if that wind was coming, they'd immediately dive down on the other side of rocks, and they would draft that wind. And they would sit there where there's no wind in the slack area and then be on you right away. And we were like, how, in an area that gets windy at times and violently windy at times, could we be away? Could these mosquitoes hang around? And that was the answer, really. We figured out, because we would look at us taking a break in this valley the first time we reached it, and it was like, dude, you have 50 mosquitoes on your backpack alone right now. And it's just on the non-winded side. It was awful.
All I know is that, like, and this could be the last discussion on mosquitoes, but all I know is they were so aggressive, and there were so many of them that, like,
that is why we didn't.
Angry.
I should say that is why we didn't continue our trip further, because we stopped getting altitude sick. We did not continue our trip further because of how miserable it was to be outside. For at least 3/4 of one of the daylight days, we did not leave our tent because it was so miserable to be outside. Like, no amount of DEET. We had 60% DEET in our can, and we were going to cake it on for a day, and that did not do justice to getting the mosquitoes off. Long sleeve shirts, jeans, you name it, we were getting bit. Yeah. And I remember, just to put in reference, I remember going outside to hang the bear bag one day, and the only layer, and it's 70, 80 degrees, the only layer that I didn't have covered in 2 to 3 layers of clothes, like t-shirt, long sleeve, sweatshirt, and then shorts, pants, jeans, The only layer I didn't have covered was I didn't have a belt. And you'll remember this. And because I'm running and stuff, I had a little bit too loose of pants. My pants were right above kind of where my ass crack was. And my shirt rode up to about 2 inches above that. You'll probably remember this picture. We got back in the tent from hanging the bear bag maybe 5 minutes out because we were sick of going 200 yards away from the tent. We went probably 50, 60 yards away. Maybe 5 minutes out. I had 23 bites, 23 complete bites on the 1 inch by 5 inch layer that was exposed while I'm moving and swatting and freaking out. Just 5 minutes, 23 bites. It was insane. But we got back that night when we actually camped up there between those two lakes, between the ravine and the lake. We thought we heard a bear. Do you remember that crazy freaking sound? We had a 45, which was way too subtle of a round for that. We also had bear spray. And we thought we heard like what a Hollywood movie would say a bear sounds like a groaning, like weird, scary.
All I know is that there was twigs snapping and something outside was moving, and I woke up and Jacob is...
You weren't awake when the sound happened.
No, but you woke us up and you're clutching the gun.
Burgy was awake.
And shaking, and you're like, there's a bear out there, we might die.
Burgy was freaking out at that point.
You were the most freaked out. And
so
I
heard like this.
Nervous.
I heard...
I'm not going to lie. I honestly didn't care that much. I thought we were fine. One of you guys had the bear spray. The other had the gun.
Yep.
But I remember you panicking. Vividly remember you panicking. And I was just like, night 2. Jacob cried night 1.
You're right.
Night 2, he's hyperventilating with the gun.
I'm in the lightest sleeper. Burgy could sleep. I've smacked Burgy in the face and he stayed asleep. But he even woke up. I think you were just exhausted. But I couldn't fall asleep, and I wasn't like worried about anything, but I just couldn't fall asleep this night. And I think it's because we wrapped in pretty early because we were sick of being outside, and I heard twigs snapping and stuff, and that was fine, and we had all heard that, and then you guys went to sleep, and I heard like the textbook sound for like this is not a realistic bear sound. But, like, as scary of a sound you can hear, like a, I don't know if it was like a freaking bobcat or what, but it was like an actual, like, growl. Like, not what you'd really hear from a bear if it was around. But it was like a deep growl, and it freaked me out. And we were starting to see elk tracks or something like that. We were starting to see elk tracks and stuff. So there were bigger animals, and that could explain the twig snapping. Owls make a lot of freaking weird sound. They don't make deep sound, so... To this day, I don't know what that sound was, but it freaked me out. And I remember Burgy was like, don't go out there. Like, don't. And I was like, I'm not going to sleep tonight until I get a headlamp on and figure out if that thing's around. And if that thing gets to us in the tent, I'm in a much worse position than if I'm outside. Because then I can work distance, right? Like, if I'm in the tent, I don't know where it's at. Like, it knows where we're at. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything about it. I was like, I'd rather go out there, fire off a warning shot if it's out there, and get it away, right? And we didn't have anything smelly on us. We had nothing. Like, I think we remember that the worst thing we had on us was melatonin pills that had strawberry flavoring, which was a big mistake that we moved past the next few days.
I don't think I took any of those. I think
Burgy and I were taking them to try and go to sleep. Which I highly recommend for people in the mountains. If you got to get over the jitters, the first 3 days, if you fall asleep, you kind of get over it by the next day. Because it's not extremely realistic for a bear to come at you or something like that if you're being responsible. But that freaked me out really bad. But again, we were exhausted, went to sleep, and the next day we were like, all right, we're officially pitching the itinerary. Like it's out the window. And we were making big adjustments. And the next day, or the next big event, we'll say, because I don't have track of the days as perfectly as I used to, we went to a little lake, and was the first time we did some legitimate trout fishing. The day before we fished that creek, we caught a decent amount of trout. I caught my first trout ever on a fly I tied myself, which was awesome, and I lost that video somewhere. Yeah, rip to that little Canon camera, or Vixia camera I actually had. But talk about how fishing went the next day.
Yeah, so the bugs were obviously a huge frustration. Basically, everything was not going to plan, and the only thing that we knew was going to make us feel better was fishing. So we're like, you know what? Like, screw the plan. We're passing out plenty of lakes. We're seeing plenty of fish in there. Let's just fish. So we basically just decided to set up camp and just spend the day kind of going to lakes that were around us. And to be honest with you, the fishing was awesome. I mean, we went
catching 3 for 3 in the first 3 casts.
Yeah, it was stupid.
It was our first experience with absolutely unpressured waters. Southeastern Wisconsin, dude. Like, I don't know what PA was like, but every single day there's people fishing whatever water you touch. We would spend hours going to Walmart ponds and crap like that to try to find a place that not everyone knew about. And even then it would be okay. But like there, few people a month are fishing those waters. It was cake. And we did all the research on what tackle we should be using, and we were very versed in the tackle we were using. We kicked ass, dude.
Yeah, the only thing that we wanted that we weren't getting was size. But like,
it's because of the size of the water and the
Correct.
quantity. It's the same thing with bass in a stock pond. If you get too many of them genetics go down, you know.
So essentially it was like we knew where the best lakes were, but physically we were just unable to get there, which was frustrating, but we took a bit of that frustration out and was just able to just spend a day fishing, went back to camp, had an awesome day. It was
8
really,
trout.
Yeah, 8 trout, catch, clean, and cook, like on the water. So those are some of the best meals that I can remember. And as far as like gear that we packed, we might not have been the smartest with some of the stuff that we brought, but we weren't idiots, and we brought out lemons and butter. And
We could have brought oil in hindsight, but we did not skimp on the class. We brought seasonings too.
Yeah, we brought a couple seasonings, butter and lemons. And so that was all we had for the fish.
It was cold enough at night to keep that butter solid too.
Yeah, it was, and to this day, some of the best fish meals that I've ever had.
And the way I describe it when you go to the mountains too, and we're probably going to be convincing a lot of people to do this now, especially if you live in the eastern states, go freaking do this. Like, make a summer trip out of it. It's
Even
amazing.
in the Midwest,
I recommend late August. If you're not doing an elk hunt, if you're not doing a velvet hunt, go out in late August. You got the chance of seeing and hearing elk bugle. And to this day, I would get teary-eyed if I heard an elk bugle, because I've heard maybe one in person. But and that's a big dream of mine. But I would say the experiences are rich. They're amazing. And you go from, think about the food you got to pack. Cliff bars are your luxury. But other than that, you're eating ramen. You're eating Mountain House, which is not bad.
Mountain House is good.
Yeah, but you're eating. It's good because you're in the mountains. Like, you're eating freeze dried food, as light as it gets. Nothing's fresh. You go from eating, what you would call real ramen, poor man's food. It's like 80 cents for a freaking pack or whatever nowadays.
Light.
It used to be even less. It's as poor as it gets. So you go all day eating that stuff, and then you eat a freaking meal that a 5-star restaurant couldn't produce, where you harvest a wild trout from wild glacial waters that are freezing cold. The meat's as firm yet tender and flaky as it could possibly be, and you're taking fresh lemon, butter, searing it in a pan. You literally catch it, gut it, and you have it searing it in your mouth within 5 minutes. It's as 5-star as a meal has ever gotten in existence, and you're eating it immediately after. Just like, you go from working your ass off, eating crap, slaving away, and now you're like in as luxury as it gets.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And that's when you're watching the sunset. It's amazing.
And I think that was one of the most important moments for us, as far as like, hey, you've had 2 long days
Mhm.
of suffering and pain to get here. Here's the reward.
And it's like we can make a trip out of this. I think that was the moment because we were considering leaving days early. I don't know if you remember that. We were considering leaving 2 days early
Yeah.
and thinking of doing something back home. And we were like, we can make a trip out of this. Like if we can just do this for 2 hours a day, it would be worth making it out here. And to give you guys a reference, Cam and Burgy went on one side of the lake. I went on the other side of the lake looking at contours and stuff like that. Because 3 people fishing one side, we're going to be competing quite a bit with each other. And so I went on the other side of the lake, and dude, I caught in one half of the lake at least, I think it was 36. And you guys probably caught 50 something amongst
we were
amongst
putting
you.
up stupid.
It was
You couldn't even keep
ridiculous.
track.
It was
It
ridiculous.
was almost every cast.
And to not to mention, they're your 7 to 8 inch size on average. Sometimes a little bigger, a lot of times a little smaller.
Mhm.
Brook trout, and they're gorgeous fish. Gorgeous fish at that size. Blue halos coming out with red dots in the
Some
center.
of 'em had,
Gorgeous
like,
orange
stripes
bellies.
on 'em.
Beautiful white tip fins, a little bit of stripes,
Yeah.
a lot of mixing on the top with dark green, amber everywhere. It's as beautiful as a fish gets, really. And that's what we're doing all day. And we went from just suffering to that. And it was awesome. And so to lay out this trip, we were rounding a loop, and this was a lake that we considered passing up on the second day, that we thought was going to be okay. And the last few lakes that we were going to go to, the first lake we were going to hit was the least priority, and the rest were far better. According to every lake link, every review, every YouTube video we watched, the rest were the place to be. And they were further species than brook trout. There were lake trout. There were tiger trout. There was a bunch of other. There was
golden trout in there.
there was
wasn't there?
splake. I don't. There might have been a chance at a golden coming up there, which is a rarity, especially wild goldens. Which wild, so many years removed from stocking, but Lakers in the mountains. I mean, that would have been so cool.
Yeah.
But so we got done with that day, and we're like, all right, hey, we can do something with this. And so that was a day hike, and so we were like, screw it. Like the big first obstacle was a pass, and we were gonna get over that pass, and we were gonna and keep in mind this time we're not seeing any people. Like, I don't think we passed a single person. Probably at the beginning of the first day, but after that,
So essentially, where we wanted to end the second day, as far as planning goes, ended up being the furthest that we made it in the entire trip.
Yep.
So we did 6 miles the first day. We did roughly 3 miles the second day, and we set up camp, and we spent a
we
full
went probably
day
a mile
fishing.
further than that.
We spent one day fishing around that camp, and then we stayed in that camp for another night, and then we packed light bags, and we went 2 miles over the biggest pass, and that was where we had the highest elevation.
Yep.
And that's where we got to where, in a perfect world, we would have ended on the second day.
Yep.
And
Which we could do if we took. I bet you if we were in good shape, took 2 days to acclimate, and we went at the right time of year, we could have done it.
yes, I agree. But there was a lot of things that we didn't account for. It's probably ignorant of us to think that within 3 trips we would have everything ironed out as far as what we needed to do. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that, like, you need to make these kind of mistakes.
People hiking their whole lives struggle to do this route.
Yep. So were we a little ignorant? Yes, but long story short, on our whatever 4th day, decided to just pack light bags, leave our camp set up, and then just go hike the 2.5 miles over the pass and get to a chain of lakes.
Do you remember?
That is ideally where we wanted to spend the entire trip fishing.
Do you remember what it took to get over that pass? Do you remember what was on the other side and how we almost didn't do it?
The snow.
Yeah. Describe what the snow was like. Because just the slope, the thickness, and how it was. I mean, it was ice under half an inch. I'll let you describe it, but
My biggest fear is heights.
Mm-hmm.
I will never go to Six Flags voluntarily. I don't like heights at all. It makes me nervous. My body like shakes and shuts down. Like I lose motor function. We get over the top of this mountain and we have to go a good 80 yards across snow to get to the other side where we can actually like make it down to the water. And
The trail's gone. The trail is
there's no
gone.
trail.
There's no trail on the other side. And it's switchbacks through snow. But they're switchbacks that one group 2 days before made. They're not it's not like, okay, there's this rock outcropping. No, this is 2 feet of snow. So the whole thing is slick down this entire drainage. The mountain is cliffs outside of the snow, so we can't go down on rocks.
And regardless of like how well you film it, your camera flattens it out. And anyone that has filmed anything knows that like cameras flatten out steep angles. So you can't even like do it justice as to the steepness that we were trying to get across.
To put it in perspective, I hunt bluff country out in southwestern Wisconsin. And out there, really very, very difficult country to get up is 100 yards long by 100 feet in elevation. This was probably double that. This was over a 45-degree slope, which, again, people 1-to-1. That's 1 foot. Every 1 foot horizontal, you got to step 1 foot up. We were stepping further up than we were horizontally, which means you can't do that unless your toes dug in. From a friction standpoint, you cannot move forward unless you have a greater aspect of forward momentum than you do upward, which is very hard to achieve on ice/snow when you're going further up, in this case, down, which is worse than going up, than you are like horizontally.
Across.
So that's why we have to cross downward but at an angle. And I led the way, and I had to stomp probably 3 times to make a shelf to try to get this in. And there were a few times that I stomped, and gladly we had trek poles. And I would put a trek pole in my left hand against the lower edge, and I would punch my fist into the snow on the high side and stomp just so we could make a trail that we were comfortable stepping across. And then the problem is, being the third guy, sometimes it was weak at that point. So you're stepping in a track that's been stomped in there, but it's giving because it's a snowy but sunny, like dilapidating kind of trail.
Yeah.
And then I think we got like halfway down. We're like, how are we getting back?
Yeah, we had to do the same thing, but like that, as far as people that we ran into goes, that peak is where we saw the most amount of people.
Yep.
When we were going down, I recall there's people that just crossed at a different spot than we did. So people had made it across. We knew you could do it. I think there was, the higher up the mountain you went, the wider the range of snow was. We just didn't want to go further down because of the angle, just to make the trek across the snow a little bit shorter. So we took a longer route through the snow, but it was at a less severe angle than it could have been if we went a little farther down. But eventually, I mean, we made it across. We got down to the lake, and if you want to talk about like big fish that we caught, I mean, that's where every single one of them was.
Now, Wyoming has a program called Master Angler, and I believe that 17, 18-inch brook? 16, 16?
I wouldn't know.
I think 16s are master. 16? I think it's 16. I think 16s are master angler, at least at the time. I would say every fish except 2 were more than that. We were catching. They will print you a letter and give you an honorable recognition for catching a trout this high. And they will say, congratulations on the master angler achievement, basically. And every trout we caught, brook trout, mind you, we're over this. Easily over this. We kept the smaller ones. We had a stringer full of 16s soaking my Ascend bag, the cheap little bags we got that are pretty clutch, not gonna lie.
No, those
But-
things would rock.
But we brought a bag, and we had so many trout on this stringer that we soaked it with just the last thing you want to soak it with, which is fresh trout in bear country. And it was amazing, dude. We got a bunch of GoPro footage, and I just remember you got on this boulder that was in the middle, and we were just letting this thing sink. And these are glacial lakes, that glaciers in the past, and now they're deep lakes. And you go from mountains and ridges and just the peaks of dry land that there are in this frickin' country. And then you're getting to lakes where you can count to 30 and you haven't hit bottom. Like, I mean, maybe that's a little ambitious, but I was doing 20, I think it was 22 seconds. And then I started reeling because I wanted to be just above bottom.
Yeah.
But, like, it was amazing. You
It
just
doesn't
didn't
help.
know what you were going to pull up.
Yeah, I was
Like-
going to say, it doesn't help that we were throwing small spinners.
Yeah,
So it's
but
not
I was
like,
using
yeah.
I was using a I tied a floral leader that was about 4 feet long to a swivel.
Yeah.
And then I put a bead and a bullet weight above it. So I had some weight, and I was casting long. But, like, dude, that was just, it was unreal. And we had to make it back to our camp, which was now a ways to go because we were day hiking.
So we made that, we turned that whole excursion into a day trip. So it was, let's pack a light bag, go 2.5 miles. It'll be our highest elevation that we'll experience on the trip, just to get to these lakes that we theoretically should have been at 2 days ago. And that was those lakes were still supposed to be the worst lakes that we were going to fish. They ended up being the best, but we didn't go further. We couldn't go further.
The sad part is after we cleared that pass, I didn't feel any mosquitoes.
Yeah, it was extremely windy over there, though.
And I would take wind over mosquitoes every day.
Yes.
But it was like, holy crap, this is what we came here for.
Yeah.
You know, and it was the lake we planned on skipping the third day.
Yep.
You know, it was like, hey, if we get here in time the second day, we'll fish it maybe for an hour or two, you know, and then we'll move on. But, like, the emptiness I feel when I think about that lake and this trip makes me want to come back so
I
bad.
know. It's so frustrating because we only got a small taste of what we could have had.
Days of research to do, not hours. Days of
Yeah.
research.
Yeah. I don't know. It's frustrating, but, like, I don't know. I think the things that we went through and the experiences we had would obviously better prepare ourselves for a trip in the future that, like, maybe we would get the most out of that. And I'm sure everybody has gone through something similar where, you know, obviously things don't pan out. You know what you have to do differently the next time, and, you know, you're probably never going to get it perfect, but unfortunately for us, as our best was the worst of our expectations prior.
I can't imagine what it would have been like.
I know, and I think about it often, and I do really want to go back out there. There's a lot of places I want to go, but it definitely feels like we have unfinished business out there.
We reached our skippable spot and realized it was further than we could have expected anything to be as far as experience. It was amazing. We laughed. We had a kick-ass time.
All things considered, with how the trip had gone and our relationship with the bugs, and failing to meet expectations, but the fact that you can fail so hard and still look back at a moment like that and just absolutely cherish every second of the suffering for that one day of absolute peak fishing that we got to experience, certainly puts into perspective, like, just the power of the outdoors and what it means to get out there and at least try it, you know, because you know, nothing worth having or nothing worth fighting for is going to come free.
Yeah.
So we definitely had to put a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, blood, tears into the trip. But even though we fell short in many eyes, still got to take away a lot of really, really awesome memories.
Yeah, and there's not a moment of that I would ever replace. I would say at times, especially including the suffering. I just think that knowing what you put into it helps you have a perspective for what you got out of it.
Yeah.
That was a great day. We started moving back from there, and we ended up going to another lake that we passed on the way there.
Yeah.
We ended up having some success at the lake. Describe kind of how... So, to get to that campsite, we went through a legendary moment in which we refer to this occurrence pretty much every time you go out with me on a hunt. And it was a moment where we got to a trailhead. We got to the end of a trail, and it split into two. And I measured on Onyx one of them. I measured the other one. One of them was maintained. The other one wasn't. One of them was a shorter route, and the other one was a little bit longer. We'd gone on the longer one on the way there, and I pointed out, hey, this is a little bit of a shorter route. Kind of describe our off-trail moment. In the trail that was labeled as a trail, but evidently stopped being maintained.
So just so we're all on the same page with where we are at the journey, we've gone 2 days, gotten as far as we felt like we could go. Spent 1 day fishing, did another day where we did a light bag hike. That's where we got to our furthest distance from the truck. We got back to the campsite that same day, and then we were like, all right, let's just really take our time getting back and fish some of the lakes that we passed that we went through on our first and second day. So we're working our way back to the truck now. We had just hit the peak of our fishing. We know that, it's going to be a little bit downhill from there as far as the fishing goes, but still some bodies of water that looked really promising that we wanted to touch. When you're in unfamiliar territory, sometimes it's easier to take a route that you've already gone through, that you're familiar with, and you at least know what to expect. Jacob's mind does not work that way.
I would rather take the harder, shorter trail than the longer, easier trail. 9 times out of 10, and Cam is not in that camp.
I would argue that any sane person would not be in that camp, because the work that it takes to make up for that distance is not worth what you gain in distance saved. Regardless, we could have gone back the exact same way that we took, where Jacob swore that he had the shortest, quickest route. Hey, let's just take a
say the word. It's a what?
It's a Sklenar Shortcut.
It's a Sklenar Shortcut. This is the origin story, folks.
So, oh my God, I can't believe I agreed to this. We took a right instead of a left. Took the long route around a lake. Little did we know that we were going to go through a swamp. So as if the mosquitoes and hardwoods and open grasslands weren't bad enough, we threw ourselves into a swamp where they were twice as bad as anywhere else that we had been on in the entire trip. And I've talked often about the frustrations behind the mosquitoes, and it peaked at this moment because we are now taking a trail that didn't become a trail anymore. So the trail that we were supposed to be going on didn't exist anymore. We're walking through bogs, and it's swampy, and the bugs are 10 times as bad. The terrain is worse. It's not maintained at all. And it just felt like there's no end in sight. And at one point, we were halfway there, and we're contemplating, do we just go all the way back and then take the original trail? Like, we literally did not think that we would be able to get through going on the route that we were going. And I don't know that I've ever been more angry at Jacob. And when you're taking one of these shortcuts, the last thing that you should ask him is, hey, how much further do we have to go? Because the answer, no matter how far away you are, is, oh, we're not that far away. And after you hear that about 15 times, you start to get really pissed off. And then you look at your phone and you look for yourself at how far we actually have to go, and you realize that we're nowhere close. And this whole time you're thinking, oh, another 200 yards and we'll be out. And then it turns into 800 yards. I was upset. And it happens every time. If any of you ever have the opportunity to go into the woods with Jacob and he tells you he has a shortcut, I'm going to save you some time and some pain and some suffering right now and say and tell him to shut up. And tell him if you go in a certain way, you're better off exiting and knowing what to expect than to take a shortcut and end up wherever the he might take you. Because I guarantee you right now, it is not worth it, and odds are you might die.
This is proven to be accurate information, as much as I hate to admit it. So this is the Cam, you're gonna look up the pling video while I explain this next portion here. But to describe exactly what this shortcut entailed, we could have taken a high ridge with a lot of topography on the way over, or could have gone through this swamp
which is the way that we had already taken.
We had a trail that was there, was no longer maintained, and I didn't know it was maintained because the first part we crossed was pretty open. Looked like there was a trail there, but it ended up going into a cedar swamp, and the mosquitoes were horrible. And Burgy, who had kept a pretty level head for most of this, was effing done, absolutely done. Super pissed off. I told Cam to just go ahead, find the light at the end of this tunnel, and we'll stick back. And Burgy had to sit down, take a break at one point, and I remember just dousing him in the little bit of a can of mosquito spray that we had left. And I just felt horrible. I felt horrible. We were probably 3/4 of the way through at that point. And just spraying him like crazy, him talking about how much he regretted the trip at the time, or maybe the particular route we took, or both. And God, it was a horrible experience. And just the point where we thought this couldn't get any worse, we were at the middle of it. And we had to head back or we had to head forward, and we weren't going to head back. We were going to push through, and it just seemed to keep getting worse. And we just kept getting destroyed, and I felt horrible the whole time for being the person that initiated this pain. But thus was the origin of the Sklenar Shortcut. And it was just, not that this was the first of its time, it was an unprecedented kind of crazy occurrence as far as the severity of it, but it was finally the one that required us to put a name to these things. And we finally found how terrible it was, and put a name to it. But then we got to our campsite, and it was probably the most scenic campsite we had, including the valley. We were in front of a lake that was freaking gorgeous. Had trout all over it, a bunch of brook trout. And we camped there in the sunset over the lake, and it was amazing. We caught some trout. We had a different style of cook than we normally did, and it was beautiful. It was as scenic as it gets. We got a lot of great pictures, and went to bed that night with bellies full and hearts full and happy, and a lot of mosquito bites that we tried and cured up. But the next day we continued on our way back, and we took a break and fished another lake. And eventually Burgy wanted to go off and find some more rocks. And he went up this little ridge, and we ended up finding a really peculiar rock.
I think he went up there to pee.
It might be it.
He was just throwing rocks around.
That's right. So Burgy is widely renowned as the luckiest individual that there ever existed, which is not true, but like in some situations he does get lucky. And this is one of those situations. So go ahead. He was just tossing rocks around.
So he's throwing rocks around, and there's one big boulder there, and he hit it. And the noise that it made was very bizarre.
So a normal rock is like just a dull click.
Yeah, this almost sounded like metallic.
Yeah, and what he was doing, he was looking for quartz, and when he would find a poor quartz alloy, if you will, but a poor quartz rock that was intersected with other rocks that just made it not look pretty or shiny or whatever, he would toss it away. And so he tossed away this piece of quartz and hit a rock, and it went ding. And so I'm gonna play a little audio from a clip here, and this is Burgy describing.
Want me to give a little explanation for the video?
Yeah, so right now, Burgy and I are going around and we're collecting crystals, and he accidentally drops a rock onto this, and the sound it made, hold on, we need a bigger one. That is not normal. What a normal rock hitting a rock sounds like is like that. This plings. So that's messed up. So when we pound it, it feels hollow on the inside. And so our bet is that this is one gigantic crystal on the inside. And we're gonna do everything in our power to try to bust it open. Check back in.
So our totally non-geological opinion is that we found the rock that was going to make us all
gigantic geode.
millionaires. We called them geodes, and it's not a geode, but it felt hollow on the inside. It felt like it had water in the inside. So we started rotating this rock, right? We started trying to roll it down this hill because we think at the bottom of the hill it's going to hit some harder rock and explode, and then we're going to be millionaires, right? And we're going to get a helicopter to fly it out and whatever. So explain how we spent the next 2 hours that we should have been hiking back.
So we did everything in our power to try to take out this boulder, to just roll it down the hill and pray to God that it busted open and it was just full of something on the inside. And I'm. If you go into your Onyx right now, I bet you have the exact.
I do, because we're gonna go back there with sledgehammers.
We were gonna come back there with.
We're gonna pack in 12-pound sledgehammers and railroad ties.
Railroad spikes.
Yep. We're gonna pack in, and I'll bring it to a freaking heat treat furnace at work, and we'll get it freaking hardened.
So we spent a good 2 hours trying to move this gigantic boulder, and you'll have to edit in this video into the podcast so you can see like
will be. It'll already be shown.
The size of this boulder. I mean,
it was
to think that we would be able to move it. I mean, we were delusional.
4 feet wide by 3 feet long and egg shaped,
and we had zero tools.
Yep. We actually tried at one point taking other rocks and our tent spikes, and we destroyed several of our tent spikes trying to crack this thing open. Because we just drive a tent spike in far enough, we'll just crank it open, and it'll be no problem. But we all dug out rocks from underneath it. Pretty strong dudes, not gonna lie, and got our freaking chests under it, and we rolled it like a foot or 2 foot. Nothing came of this. But to this day, in Onyx, I'll never remove the marker. And we're going back and getting rich, dude. We're going to hike freaking 10 miles in, whatever it takes, and we're going to bust this rock open. And it's probably just going to be a normal freaking rock on the inside.
There's no way.
It's pretty, I mean, I've never heard a rock sound like that.
Normal rocks do not sound like that. What we should do is actually research what that means.
I can't believe we haven't, actually, now that we talk about it.
Yeah.
Someone is listening to this, and someone knows that this rock is not valuable and is a piece of shit, and they're gonna message us like, you're the biggest dumbasses. Spoiler alert, we knew that, so we know we're stupid, so you don't need to come at us with hate. Just educate us real quick. But so we find what we believe is a legendary rock, spend hours trying to get it open or whatever you want to call it, and we don't, and so then we hike away back, and honestly, we covered more ground than we did the first day, and we made some good time.
We made really good time. It helps that
we took time to fish lakes too.
Yeah, but we were going downhill, and I think by that point in the trip, everybody was sort of ready to go home, or at
Mhm.
least
Except for me. We were all physically ready to go home, but not
Yes.
necessarily mentally.
Yes. So it was a little bit of excitement to be like, hey, like we're about to go see civilization again. Like that's gonna be really fun. We actually camped the last night, probably 2 miles from the car, and just found a good spot. And
Beautiful,
the one thing-
beautiful stars.
we brought a lot of dumb stuff, but the one thing that is the best decision we ever made was I brought a miniature cribbage board, and we played some ultra competitive games of cribbage every night.
It was amazing. If we didn't have that and we had those mosquitoes, we would have gone insane. Burgy learned how to do a backdraft when he was shuffling too. What was it called? What's it called?
Bridge.
Waterfall?
Bridge
or waterfall or whatever.
You shuffle
So the
cards
bridge, and then
bridge.
when you flush them back down, he's like, "Guys, check out my backdraft." We were so altitude sick. We thought everything was absolutely hilarious. So it was like being hammered 24/7. And oh my god, it was hilarious. But he just kept coming up with all these different words. Backdraft was the quote of the trip, besides Sklenar Shortcut. But that night we hung the bear bag up, and I remember turning around from the bear bag, and we all did not want to go that night. Ever since we heard those sounds and shit, and it got cold out, and we just didn't want to go that night.
Yeah.
But I remember looking up and seeing the campfire that we had out front in the tent, and then over this mountain that was one of the mountains that formed the pass that we crossed was the most gorgeous skyline I'd ever seen in my life. Just insane. We're hundreds of miles from the nearest town with lights, and it was probably 800. But it was phenomenal. And if you ever go out to the mountains, unless you got the latest and greatest Galaxy phone or something like that, if you got an iPhone, you got a camcorder, or you got a decent camera, you're probably not going to be able to take pictures of the stars. You need a long, long exposure.
I've heard
shot.
the Galaxy phones are a gimmick.
They're pretty. Really?
Yeah,
I have a
the
buddy
stuff
that-
where you
I
zoom
have a
in
buddy
on the
that-
moon,
Yeah.
it AI generates. It automatically AI generates what the moon should look like. Because somebody
That's fake news.
No. Someone took a blurry picture of the moon on their laptop and zoomed in on it with their Galaxy phone, and it made it clear.
I don't know if I believe that, but fact check us on that one. But I will say I have buddies that take pictures of stars with Galaxy phones, and that's harder to do than the moon. But I can take a good picture of a moon with an iPhone, a full moon. But I will say that that long exposure shots in the dark are very hard to get. You can kind of do it on a time lapse with a good GoPro, but you don't get nearly the detail that you see in person. When you can see the outline of the Milky Way, like I could when I was really young and out in the wild with my dad, that's a sight that brings you to tears. It was very special.
I mean,
very special.
You can say it, but like you can't
quantify
paint that picture. But when you're looking up at the sky and there is more stars than there is black
on a no
between
moon
them.
night. On a no moon night.
I mean, there's more stars in the sky than there is black in between them, as wide as the eye can see. It is.
You can see the stripe that the Milky Way creates. You can see that the rim, the band of stars around our galaxy. There's a shape to it. The way you described it, there's more light from stars than there is dark. It is ridiculous. It is phenomenal. And
it was extremely cold at
makes
night,
you feel pretty small.
and I wanted to just stand out there all night long and just look up at the sky.
Well, we were shivering. It was 34 degrees.
It
we had
was-
ice on our tent.
It was mesmerizing.
Yeah.
It
And
was-
not to mention we were terrified. We were inexperienced and terrified of bears and whatnot. And blah, 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 blah. But the main thing was we were in as thick a layers as we could get, and it was freezing.
Yeah.
But we spent 30 minutes out there. And
It was
just
incredible.
staring in
It
complete
was
silence.
incredible. Which to anyone who lives out west and does remote stuff like this, I'm sure it's absolutely nothing to you. But from
I mean,
our
even if you live
perspective
out
as
west,
a
you
couple-
can't live in an area that you can see stars like that. You can't. Imagine having to drive an hour or 100 miles in the mountains. It's like 4 hours of driving. You got to go through passes and around shit, and it's not the same. Like, you can live out there. You can do that. But you are not going to see stars like we did that many miles in unless you're living off the land.
Yeah.
And to an extent, that's what we were doing. But it was amazing. It was incredible.
Arguably one of my favorite moments of the trip, to be honest with you.
I think one of the coolest moments for me is when we went over that pass and we came back over. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when you get, this is a kind of a metaphor for life, and when you get to a pass in a mountain, particularly a pass and not a peak, you always think that the view is going to be where you're going to. You always think that when I get to this place on the other side of this ridge, when I finally crest this and I see the other side, it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be amazing. And a lot of times you take pictures. Like, I'll take 20 minutes worth of pictures, and I'll just be staring at it and gawking at it like, that's amazing. And then I'll turn around to where we were, or sometimes you make it all the way down to the bottom, and you come back up on your day hike, and you realize that the most beautiful place is looking back on where you went.
Yeah.
And seeing where you were, not just because you experienced it. That adds a whole nother layer to the beauty, because you remember the little lakes you passed and the points and stuff. But sometimes just the best view is behind you. And I think that gives you a very immediate and tangible appreciation for the work you just went through. And I think that night sky at the end was like, this is your reward. Like, this is, quote unquote, you almost died. Like, you braved the saber-tooth mosquitoes. Like, you dealt with your recovering ACL the whole time. You had altitude sickness. You tried to make the most of this trip, and you made it all the way back here. And at the time that's darkest, because you don't realize, like, as the sun's setting, you get a cool sunset most of the time. If it's going over a peak, you lose it before it gets those deep pinks and reds and whatever. And it's over, and it starts to get dark. You got to wait an hour after it gets dark for those stars to come out, because that sun's still, it's below the horizon, but it's still giving light exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see into the sky. And it was at the darkest point, when everything seemed to have gone out and fizzled out, the trip was winding down, we had gone through all the suffering, that this just utter beauty came throughout it. And I think we got to look back at what we had made of a trip. And we went from, like, we want to play our freaking tournament of cribbage, and we're just going to go to bed, we're going to rest up, we're going to make our hike tomorrow, get back to civilization. And we were like, wow, like, this is a very different experience.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it.
No, me either. And we capped off that night, made it back to the truck fairly early the next day, and started our journey back.
We had done about, I think it was 24 miles total.
Something like that. I think the furthest we got from the truck was like 14 miles.
Yeah, that was distance-wise, but we did all sorts of other hiking around and stuff like that.
Right.
With the tracks, we were 24 total, I think. And we plan to go much further now. We plan to do like a 62-mile loop or something. We got to the end of this trip, and the underrated items we didn't bring, one, more mosquito spray. Write that off right away. I'll say we did a good job with having portable chargers for our phones to have navigation.
Buddy. Chapstick.
Yep. That was my next one. Chapstick. We got pictures of our lips in probably 9 to 10 places on each upper and lower lip, cracked and bleeding.
We went through this entire trip with zero chapstick.
And much
balm.
more sun exposure, because we're 10,000 feet closer to the sun than usual at base camp, and we get higher from there every day.
we had absolutely nothing to put on our lips except for water.
Which made it worse.
Yeah.
And licking your lips only gets
Makes it
them worse. Yeah. So we were all cracked and bleeding. And we go to this restaurant and we have a burger. And oh my God. Was that burger good? It was probably like your average Culver's burger.
I was going to say, on an average night, it's probably a good 6.5.
Yeah. 6 or 7
out of
out of
10.
10. But this was a 14 out of 10 when we ate it. The sad thing was, though, anything you had with acidity, like ketchup or whatever, or mustard or whatever, burnt bad.
Yeah.
Real bad. And
As soon as we got back to civilization, the first thing we did, gas station, chapstick. Where's the closest place we could get a burger?
we were starving, hadn't peed in a toilet in forever, wiping our ass outdoors, smelled like crap, mosquito spray, sweat, and all the nasty crap you could imagine. And we were like, chapstick. Like, it was sunburnt to hell, I should mention. Oh,
Do we
so
have
bad.
any photos of what our lips
I do.
look like?
I do. It was bad. I was bleeding from my lips so much, my teeth had blood stains. Like, my teeth had blood going between them every time I took a picture, no matter how much I tried to clear it. It was terrible. But, dude, I mean, all that being said, I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
You can't have a more perfect worst trip.
Yeah. We'll try. We'll try.
We'll take shortcuts along the way.
Yeah, dude. We'll take a few shortcuts with me, and we'll get there. But I gotta say, I went with my girlfriend to another place in Wyoming, and it was amazing. And we caught wild golden trout, her and I, in an area that I would say less than 10,000 people in all of time since these mountains were formed have been, which is saying something. Like, I didn't see a single piece of human sign, and I'm a woodsman. Like, I break down human sign. Not a single piece of human sign going 10 miles off trail, and had an experience that it made me cry. It was so beautiful. And there's nothing more that I want than to share that with you guys and do it the right way. Because if Caitlin can do it and you can't, then I got news for you. I'm leaving you behind. As much as Caitlin's in great shape and can do this, she was carrying a 30, 40-pound bag. I was carrying probably a 60, 70-pound bag, which sounds ridiculous, but trust me, we were bringing luxury items. We brought a pillow and an extra blanket and a bunch of other things so that she'd be comfortable, and that's what you should do. That's what you should do in that situation. But, dude, that's the next level trip.
Yeah.
And I think you, me, and Alex should do it. I just got to convince Alex that the Rockies will change your life. Because he'd probably rather go to the beach in Florida where all the other grandmas, and retirees are drinking and catch whiting all day.
No, I certainly need to go back out there.
It's a different level.
I've had the bug to go out west again.
Yeah. Dude,
Terribly.
over
since.
1,000 times better than the previous trip.
And it doesn't help that, like, I got Austin in Alaska and now Ethan and Burgy in Montana, and they're all like, oh, come out. This time it was Jacob fearing for his own life more so than myself. But
Yeah, well, you guys made fun of me so much for being terrified for my own life that every time you go out with me afterward, I have to make you afraid for yours.
Yeah.
So we'll keep working on that. I think the tally's up pretty
Yeah,
good.
I'm
winning the
just about
ratio.
the only experience I've had with Jacob where he thought he was going to die instead of me thinking that I was going to die.
Right. And my goal is to just make them pay for it every day since.
Yeah.
Maybe Burgy knew the retribution he faced. And that's why he's like, hey, I'm getting out of here while I'm still alive. So maybe you need to wisen up a little bit there, buddy.
Either that or I just need to listen to your dad and stop going on these trips with you so that I can live to see another day.
That sounds about right. Or you can kill more bucks with me and just know that you might die in between. Maybe the fun you have is worth dying for. We'll leave it there.
To each their own.
We'll leave it there. It depends on the ambition you have and who you are.
Right.
But I would say I certainly freaking enjoyed this conversation. We haven't talked about this story in years. And I don't know if the fans did at all, but we appreciate you if you're sticking through with us right now. This has been a blast, Cam. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We've got 100,000 more other stories we could tell that are as interesting, if not more, as this one. But this is a good intro to maybe some episodes I have with Cam, maybe if one a month or one or two a month. But dude, I really, really appreciate you coming on. It was awesome to relive the story with you and talk about some memories with some friends I haven't talked to or been with in a long time. And to the audience, I really appreciate you guys sticking around, listening to us, watching us, whatever you're doing, looking at these clips. And I really hope that despite the risks you may have with some shortcuts or maybe some longer routes, that you take them and you go through that suffering and you discover what it really is to be called to something like the outdoors and to bring someone along on that passion. Because as beautiful as it is and as amazing and fulfilling as it is to succeed in the outdoors, it's far better to find that wonder in someone's eyes that you once had as a kid or when you were being introduced to it, to pass that on. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So continue to do that despite whoever says you shouldn't be getting more people in the outdoors. Like, we're full already. Don't worry about it. Get more people into it. Let them suffer. Realize that if they're worth it and they should stick to it, that they're going to get through it. And go make some amazing memories, guys.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Cam, you would advocate for near-death experiences now, is what you're saying?
I don't know about near death, but definitely definitely understand that nothing worth having is going to come easy, and it's going to take some hard work. If you're friends with Jacob, he just might kill you on your way to those experiences, but definitely don't stop trying to pursue them.
Yep. I would say the two things to live by when you're choosing your adventures is anything in life worth doing is worth overdoing. And just because it's easy. If it was easy, not everyone would want to do it. But if it was easy, I certainly wouldn't want to do it. So go after things that are hard, and it's in the pursuit of those things that you find out who you really are. And you may be able to just guide a friend to who they want to be as well. Mm-hmm. So thank you guys for listening. This has been a Wild Calling Wednesday with Cam Maderski and me, Jacob Sklenar. Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.